Good morning, everybody. I am Ragesh from NTT DATA's digital COA team in Singapore, and I work specifically on the conversational AI engagements with governments as well as other departments. What we're going to talk about today is how do we improve access to government services through omni-channel conversational AI. And I think all of us are particularly aware of the circumstances that have been there over the last couple of years, specifically once the pandemic has set in. And the way governments engage with citizens has completely transformed or completely changed. It has brought with it a new set of challenges on how government services are essentially rendered or provided to the citizens. And in today's session, we'll look at how conversational AI is helping bridge that barrier of accessing government services for the citizens. So, particularly over the last couple of years, the importance of building economy has gone up further as well. And that's one of the key objectives of a government. And there are significant challenges in the way, as I mentioned, services are provided across different governments, be it either at the federal level, a state level, or a city level administration. It has also been challenging in empowering people, helping them find the right opportunities, and ensuring that the pandemic does not take too much of a toll on general governance. And finally, while doing this, there is a focus on increasing efficiency in the way things are done and essentially reduce the total cost of operations for governments as well. So what we are currently doing is using conversational AI to create a path for all. And when I say path, a path needs to have a purpose. So we understand how conversational AI affects general governance. We automate interactions between citizens and the government. There is timely engagement with all the stakeholders, internal and external. And while we automate conversations with citizens, it also is still human-like. It retains the human element of the conversation, of the nature of the conversation. So what is conversational AI and the platform that it brings along? Any interaction with the government between the citizens can either be through chat, can be through voice, or they can send in an email, or there are different ways in which a citizen wanting to converse with a particular government, at whether it's a federal, state, or a city level, would interact via these mediums. And conversational AI gives us a platform to automate conversations across these channels that I mentioned, which is chat. And the chat conversations can be automated across a web portal, or it could be a mobile app. It could also be through social channels which citizens already use, like Viber, like WhatsApp, like Facebook Messenger, so that the services that governments are providing are right at the fingertips of the citizens. It could be over conventional channels like voice, which people call and speak to, let's say, executives or customer care executives across different departments. Or it could also be through grievances or redressals that are addressed through email. So if we are able to automate 60 to 70% of these conversations and ensure a citizen can get all the self-help needed right in that instant, that's what we are referring to creating a path for all. Let's take a look at some of the examples of how other governments across the globe are using conversational AI to provide services. These are some examples of governments across the world providing conversational AI services. The first one that you see is at a federal level, where the Department of Homeland Security in USA has a chat-based interface provided for citizens to come in and check on various queries like filing an I-90 or answering questions about immigrations, statuses, green cards, passports, and so on and so forth. And currently it's accessing about 1 million applicants every month. The other chatbot or the other chat-based interface that you see is a state-level interface. So it could also be a state-level interface or a bot which can handle health services that you see there, social gatherings, tourism hotspots, public transportation schedule, and this is essentially implemented by the government of Mississippi. It could also be at a city level, where cities like Dubai and Singapore have already adopted conversational AI and quite advanced ones at that, where citizens can come in and type or speak out the questions of their choice. The platform can identify what users are saying, a natural language identification. So there is no necessary to change behavior of how the citizens would request for services. And it can understand natural language and respond back with the relevant information. So you see an example of Dubai's chatbot for helping people pay their bills, for example, or there's also a Singapore government's Ministry of Communications chatbot about general notifications and general information that they have to give to the public. So there are two key things that come out of the examples that we've seen. One is the ability to self-service. The second is the necessity to not change any customer behavior. Customers can or citizens can still chat in their own natural language, and this can be across different languages across the globe. So a conversational AI platform like this can support over 100 languages as well. Let's look at some of the use cases on how some departments, let's say the Philippines government, can use conversational AI and what are some of the different applications that can be there across different departments. So the Department of Agriculture, for example, can use a chat-based interface or a voice-based interface for promotion of agricultural development. It can give interfaces to the farmers for updates on weather, updates on prices in the market, job opportunities in farming and fishery, and all the latest rates as well. A Department of Finance, on the other hand, can use a chat or a voice-based interface for something that's as crucial as filing taxes. So it could be on reminders for filing taxes, managing employees within the department as well. So it's not necessary that these conversational AI interfaces manage just citizens, but it could be used within the departments and improving the efficiencies of processes within departments as well. It could also be on sharing of details of policies that you see, or handling any other queries or requests regarding finance that a citizen would have. If you look at Department of Health is again involved in quite a bit of administration across healthcare providers. So they can actually provide a service for contactless registrations, for vaccinations, for admissions at hospitals, for sharing all of the latest COVID-related information, and also making the citizen aware on practices for managing COVID-19 as well. So these are some of the examples that we have done, and we will get into that in detail in some time. Other departments like Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, as well as Department of Education, can also use it for use cases like monitoring the entity for all housing, providing information about housing, and providing information about the land occupancy certificates and so on and so forth, which is essentially something that the revenue department would also be interested in. And we'll look at a use case or a case study shortly as well. And Department of Education, of course, can also be used to disseminate the different information that's relating to the educational capability, providing access to the exams that are going to be conducted and the overall changes in the infrastructure. So with that, let us take a look at some of the actual case studies where this is live and currently governments are using it, what we have done from NTT DATA. So this is the first case study that we are looking at. And this is a live deployment that is in the government of Telangana, which is a state level government in India. This is implemented in the revenue department of the government of Telangana. And this is essentially used to give the citizens an idea about the building permissions that are required, the layout permissions, occupancy certificates, land use certificates, essentially the entire gamut of services that are around land and revenue. The approach for the platform, the way we built this was to launch a common integrated omni-channel platform, which can handle multiple use cases or workflows. So the government currently uses a chat-based interface on their website, a chat-based interface on a social channel, and also a voice-based automation where the executives handling customer calls are actually helped by AI by reducing the overall call volume as well. So we will take a look at this in greater detail with a demo. But before we get into the demo, what are some of the benefits that we are looking at through the implementation of such a intervention of conversational AI in particularly these kind of governments? One is we are looking at the increase in the engagement, and engagement is a traceable outcome. So each interaction that a citizen is having with the government can actually be rated with a score, which is either a net promoter score or a customer satisfaction or a citizen satisfaction rating. And this will essentially go back into planning of how the digital workflow has been created. It will definitely impact productivity because in the example that you saw earlier, there are various aspects of land and revenue that are being automated. And these workflows essentially reduce the load of work on the internal department members as well. And finally, there's a clear-cut operational cost reduction because the number of calls that are coming in or requests that are coming in, or specifically during the pandemic, with no access to physically visit across all timings, the conversational AI interaction has actually reduced the operational cost of each interaction, and it can allow you to scale the same service across a larger diaspora of citizens as well. So these are some of the numbers that we are currently seeing in these implementations. There are other intangible benefits, which is essentially around automation of engagement. So you can reach out to a wider section of citizens or population using these kind of interventions, which would not have been possible before in a physical or a manual kind of interaction. The dissemination of information, notifications, announcements can now happen digitally and remotely. There is an increased transparency in the entire process. And this not just applies to the governments, but it also leads to an increased satisfaction within the citizens of the state or the city or the country. And finally, all of the interactions that are happening on the platform, on the conversational AI platform, are tracked. The data is extremely secure. These are banking grade security that we're talking about. And all of the data that is generated can actually be used back for the city planning or the state planning, because there's a lot of insights being generated about what citizens are talking about and what services are being requested. Let's take a deeper look into the demo and see how the current bot or the current conversational AI interface with the government of Telangana works. This is currently one of the assets of the government of Telangana, where there's a web-based platform that is integrated for chat. So the citizen can come down to the bot, and there are a few workflows that are available as you see. You can use the option to click on one of those workflows, and it gives a wide range of services like building permissions, layout permissions, occupancy certificates, and so on and so forth. You can also check the status of existing applications where the information can be shared either through URLs, you can provide videos, you can also provide brochures or copies as well through the same platform. You could also interact with the platform using a text-based input. So you see the citizen entering a question here, and questions can actually be answered. The conversational AI, which runs based on a technology called the NLP, which is the natural language understanding or natural language processing, can understand what users or citizens are talking about, as you see in the text-based input that is currently on the demo, and it can respond to each of those questions individually as well. Now, all this information which is essentially generated can also go back to generate insights about what services the citizens are asking, as I mentioned earlier. And there are advanced analytics which are provided as well as a part of the entire conversational AI offering. This is another case where the city of Baguio implemented a small pilot during one of the most difficult phases or the waves of the COVID-19 pandemic to help citizens be more aware about COVID-19 and different ways in which they can actually handle the situation. So you can see some of the examples on the slide here, that the bot or the interface was able to understand questions from citizens, which are most common conceptions or misconceptions, if I might put it that way, around COVID-19, and actually help dispel those misconceptions and create an awareness about the disease, especially when it was in the initial stages of its phase towards early last year. It could also help the citizens understand whether they were going through any symptoms. They could check their symptoms and then take the corrective action, which is reaching out to the nearest help center, or they could also figure out information about vaccines and probably also register for vaccines as a part of the exercise. So in this particular case, there were over hundreds of questions which were configured and which could be answered readily when a user or a citizen would come onto the platform. And all of these are possible through a natural language understanding or a natural language processing, as I mentioned earlier. So with that, I would like to conclude this session by referring to one of the leading statesmen of an era in the past. And he at times mentioned that the best way to predict the future is actually to create it. And conversational AI is the technology that can actually bridge the gap between citizens and the governments, particularly in the time of pandemic that we are looking at right now. We are very happy to interact post the discussion, and our credentials are listed below as well. Thank you so much.